Time to say a very good afternoon to Neil Oliver. Neil, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Mike. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too. I mean, I did sympathise with your piece about the boiling frog because in all sorts of different ways, it made a lot of sense in terms of the feeling that we all have of being sort of trapped in something that we're not quite sure how to get out of.
Yeah. I mean, I've noticed that I'd heard a lot of people using the metaphor of the boiling frog over the last how long. And it's this idea that if you put a frog in cold water and then gradually turn up the heat, it won't notice and it will stay there until actually it gets to boiling point. It's worth pointing out that biologists have had a look at this over the years, and it is a myth.
Right.
So if you drop a frog into boiling water, it won't jump out; it will die.
Right.
And if you put it in cold water and wait till the heat comes up, it just eventually leaves before it's in any danger. But the analogy I was trying to make was that lockdown is a lid on the pot, so that even though we're all frogs and we know that the temperature's getting hotter and we know it's becoming a bit of a threat to life, but we can't get out because of the lid provided by lockdown. That was really just the point I was trying to make. But like you report all the time, I listen to Julia Hartley-Brewer in the morning, and she into heartbreaking, soul-searching interviews that she does with people who are telling their lockdown stories, and you can feel the consequences of people being poached in water that's being that's becoming unbearable, metaphorically speaking, and I just we're there, we're past the crisis point, and too many people have been hurt too much.
They really are. I mean, we spoke to Dave in Shrewsbury earlier on, who just called in this morning, and he said, we're just fed up. We don't want to live by rules anymore. And I think there's going to be a lot of that. Once this, the lifting of the lockdown starts to happen, I mean, you can tell, no doubt, that there will be people in Downing Street saying, we've got to be really careful how we do it, and we've got to try and arrange for people's behaviour to be this rather than that. And I find that quite insidious in any event. The idea that somebody's sitting in a government building, paid for by us, telling each other how we should be behaving. I don't like the sound of it.
No, I think it's going to be very painful coming out of it. I think it's like I don't know, when someone's been in a medically induced coma, and you don't just expect them to leap out of bed the minute you stop applying the drugs that have put them into that coma. It's a long, slow process. I think I've heard talk that I don't agree with about getting the kids back into school and kind of pressure cooking them to continue that analogy of boiling water. Longer days, no holidays, to speed them up. I think that's desperately wrong. I think the kids, especially the ones that, I mean, my youngest is 12, but I think they just need to get back into school and meet each other again, and get to know what it's like being in a classroom with 30 kids in it, and get familiar again and comfortable again with teachers. Maybe they should be going on school trips. Maybe they should be going on lots of walks together. Maybe they should just be being reacclimatized to what it is to be at school. Because in short, I don't think there's no way to quickly catch this up. We've had a year lost, and I think it's going to take at least that long to catch up. I've always felt it's a bit like in the disaster movies when there's a tsunami, and the first thing that happens is the tide just disappears. Water goes. That's where we are at the moment. And then the big wave has built up out over the horizon sort of style, and it comes sweeping back in. I think we're about to be hit in many respects by something of a tsunami of the economic reality, and as it begins to unfold, what's been done to people emotionally in terms of relationships, marriages, obviously livelihoods, businesses. Just every shred, every thread of the weave of our society, that great complicated tapestry, has been rent and torn, and it's going to take a long time to get over this. There's going to have to be a rehabilitation process, goodness knows, lasting for years.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right, because I think I told you before, when the first lockdown happened, I didn't go to see my kids or their mother for like 8 weeks or something like that, for a variety of reasons, that we all thought that was for the best. But when I finally went to see them for the day, it was quite a strange experience. Not because I hadn't seen anyone, because I had been coming into work, but because I hadn't seen them, aside from on a kind of video call. We were all at one point we all sat in the garden and just didn't say anything. It was
Yeah,
quite odd.
Don't you find I travel a lot? Well, I used to.
This is going to be the thing, right? I used to do blah, you know.
I used to travel, and I'd be away. I mean, I've been away sometimes. I've been away from the house for best part of half a year, on more than one occasion, and just staying in touch remotely. And then you come back, and you're so desperate to get back. You fantasize about it, and you finally make the trip back, and you open the door, and you come in. And often the first thing you do within the first half hour is you have a fight, right. With your nearest and dearest, right. Because the anticipation has been so much on both sides, and everyone's so desperate for it all to be this lovely homecoming. Right. As often as not, there's a right ding dong because it's just too intense. Right. I think there'll be a lot of that as people meet each other again. There's a lot of relationships have been put into suspended animation, and when people collide with one another again, goodness me.
Of course, and also, even just out and about on the streets, because I don't know about you, but I have changed the way that I actually walk now. I mean, I walk from a car park where I park my car every day. It's about, I don't know, quarter of a mile to the office. And I go past a hospital, as strangely as it would seem, where they had the first COVID case in Britain, in Guy's Hospital, right? So I'm aware of the fact that it's a hospital, and there's a lot of people walking about, some of them wearing masks, some of them not. But I genuinely walk on the other side of the road to stay away from the people that are coming the other way. Or I walk in the middle of the road, which is, and I mean, I never used to think about how I walked.
I know. I do that. I definitely have been doing that. But I live in a Stirling's. I mean, it's technically a city, but it's really it's a town. Yeah. In terms of its size and scope, you walk around it, and
it's about the size of Blackheath, isn't it?
Yeah. It's small, and nonetheless, I haven't been. I do go into the town because certainly I've got to go and get food and such like. But apart from that, I just don't go in. If I don't have to go in, I avoid it strenuously. Because I don't like that post-apocalyptic atmosphere of people and the masks and all the rest of it. I just stay away from it rather than anything else. And so I just walk in on the fringes of countryside really, and the only people I meet are dog walkers. Yeah. So I have absented myself from society as much as I can because I don't like looking at it. Right. I don't like the emptiness. I don't like the quiet. The shut shops. Some of them are boarded up. There's businesses that are gone to the extent that they're obviously not coming back, and I just find it too upsetting. Yeah. So yeah, I've changed where I go beyond necessity. Yeah. I just keep out of it.
And that's the thing about travelling as well, because I mean, the one place I did go last year was a sort of 4-day trip to the Isle of Wight, which we managed to do. But that I hated the travelling of it which is normally something I would love to do, because we were on a ferry from Portsmouth to the Isle of Wight, and everyone was wearing a mask, and it was just awful. And one of the things that, as I've said many times, I need to go and do is see my mother. I mean, she started saying to my sister, who I spoke to the other night, she was asked, what's the one thing that you want? And she's like, I want my son to come and see me. And so, she's like desperate to see me. I'm desperate to see her. But can I go that long wearing a mask all that way on a transatlantic plane? I mean, I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, it's distressing, and I think a lot, because of the way a lot of it has been covered in the mainstream media. A lot of the broadcast media has been so blinkered and focused only on COVID. Yeah, so it has to be about COVID. It has to be about that. I think there's maybe an unawareness in the general populace about what's coming, and I don't mean to say that in a doom and gloom sense. No, it's not just that. I just feel that because we haven't been, as a nation, we haven't really been looking apart from just through a kind of it's like looking at the world through a pen, with the inside, and you look at that. It's just that tiny bit of the world that's been focused upon, and everything else has been happening. And when people are suddenly confronted by it, I think it's going to be very upsetting. I genuinely do, and I think there's going to be we're going to have to find ways to come back together. it would be naive and foolish, I think, to imagine that you can atomize society in the way that we have and isolate so many people in the way that we have, and for that to be swiftly remedied.
Mm. And as you say, as far as the schools are concerned, I mean, it's almost as though the people who are in charge think it's all about the learning process and it's all about, you know, academia. It's not about academia at all, is it? I mean, it's not about whether or not you've learnt, you know, your 10 times table or your 8 times table or the algorithm of something or other. You know, it's about, as you say, the whole sociology of mixing with people and mingling with people. I mean, what does it mean? I mean, I didn't get to sort of analyse fully the whole Nicola Sturgeon statement yesterday. All I gathered from what she said was that some schools are going to open next week, but basically, if everybody doesn't behave, then we're going to shut them all again.
For sure, that'll happen. But yes, I've got 3. My eldest is in 6th year, and she isn't going back. She's not been sort of recalled. And my youngest, he's 12. He's not going back, although he's at high school. He's in 1st year. But my middle boy, he's in S4, and he's been sort of summoned. He's been recalled.
Right.
They're going to go back in, and we're not quite sure exactly how that will take shape. But they're going back in, and yeah, I'm sure all the usual caveats apply. I'm sure if there's so much as a flicker on the R number or anything else, that there'll be a rethink. But they are going back in, and my boy he's desperate to get back to school in many ways.
Yeah.
You know, he wants back into the social side. You know, the mixing side of it. But you know, there's also a sense of trepidation about him because he's been away from it and out of it for so long that it's quite a nerve-wracking prospect for him and them. You know, we're in contact with some of his friends as well, and there's this sort of air of uncertainty about them.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. The school is about education, of course it is. But if you remember, when your kids come in from school, they don't really talk about lessons. What they talk about is everything else that happened.
Yeah.
She said, he said, and then this happened, and you know, it's life that they talk about, and it's those you know, cloths from rough to smooth that buff off the rough corners on kids and turn them into and let them become, you know, the people that they've got the potential to be. And the education is a very important, you know, component of that. I mean, education, educo, to lead out. You know, it's not about ramming stuff into kids. It's about drawing out that which is latent within them. That's what education in its ideal form is supposed to be. And you don't do that with via a computer screen. Education in the traditional sense is a very sociable thing, collegiate. It's that idea of being together with other people, and you don't get it by gallery view on a Zoom call or any of the other things. It's we're tribal, physical, social creatures, and it's been around the sights and the sounds and the smells and the atmosphere of it that all coalesces and comes together as the learning experience. You know, school is a world. It's not something you look at through a window.
No, and it's the walk home with your mates. It's the whatever it is that you do. You know, the walk. You know, the meeting up and you know, the gossiping. It's all of that. And similarly, you know, for people who have left the education process. I mean, I know people who have got new jobs since this lockdown started, or were about to start a new job just when it came in, who've never been to the office because they started a job and they've never met physically the people they work with.
No, I think there's too much. I think that, you know, the technology is so clever. Well, undoubtedly, I mean, the technology that's been available to us is extraordinary in its reach and its flexibility and all the rest of it. But it's machines, and we are not machines. You know, we're made of meat.
Yes.
And they're made of, you know, we're made of carbon, and they're made of silica. Yeah. You know, we're two different things, and that which, you know, machines learn from each other. You know, IPROM programmers and all the rest of it, and self-programming computers. That is in the nature of it. But we are different. And it's not purely by interacting with technology that we become people. You know, we become more. I think the more time you spend with machines, the more mechanical you become. When in reality, what you need is to become more human.
Yes, and similarly, I suppose if we look at the politicians of this world which we now inhabit, you know, they're going to have to go back into reverse, and I'm not certain that they will be able to do this. By the way, going back to kind of asking our permission to do things rather than just doing things and telling us we have to go along?
I think across the board, I think the political class has been exposed. I think a very bright light has been turned on the reality of the political world, and the extent to which it's just become a public relations exercise. It's very dispiriting, really. I think so much of what's been done has been for the sake of how things look. You know, there's sort of reputation management that's woven through everything that's being done. And my sort of heart cries out for somebody who would come forward and stand up and say something profoundly honest. I would begin to look favourably upon somebody that stepped forward and said, that was a mistake.
Yeah.
We ought not to have done that. You know, I'll be quite honest with you. We got an enormous fright when we saw what was coming out of the East.
Yeah.
And when we first glimpsed it in Italy, we got a real fright, and we're only human. But, you know, I'm here today to say that we should not have done things the way that we did.
Yeah.
And, you know, I promise you now that we will not seek to tackle another virus or another emergency in that way. And you have my word on it. You know, I would start to see that person as a leader.
Yeah.
And I would, you know, not that I'm desperate to be led by anyone, but I would start to take that kind of language seriously. I want someone to stand up and do a kind of a mea culpa and say, that was wrong. Because people make mistakes. It's not the... It's important, but it's also without value, your mistake, unless you acknowledge it and move forward from it.
Well, this is it, because the raison d'etre for everything that they've done is impossible to prove, you know, because all they can say is, well, look what might have happened if we didn't do it. And you might as well, you know, shout at the moon. You might as well howl at the sea. You know, you have no clue what would have happened or what might have happened or how much worse it might have been. Just don't know. Yeah.
No, I just cry out for honesty.
Yeah.
That's really what I'm hungry for. And I wouldn't, and I'm sure many other people wouldn't. I wouldn't judge it and say, well, now you admit you've made a mistake, so you have to go and live on a desert island now and never rejoin polite society.
Yeah.
I think quite the contrary. I've always felt it. You know, in the Scottish independence, campaigning that went on. I felt at the time that if someone had stood up in 2014 and said, hypothetically, if we do this, it's going to be really hard, probably for about a quarter of a century.
Yeah.
It's going to be really tough. I won't kid you. If you know, whatever your life's like now, if someone had said that, but within it had been inspirational in amongst the honesty, then that would have been a different facet of the same argument. You know, but the myth that was put about at the time was that you could do something so constitutionally revolutionary and nothing really would change.
Right.
You know, but just an independent country, everything would be the same. But that was dishonest.
Yes, and I think that's the trouble. We now live in a time where the truth is very much evaded by politicians. They don't seem to want to address the truth at all. And the tragedy for us now is that we're not getting any closer to it, because in fact we're getting further away. Because this time last year, we were told 3 weeks to flatten the curve, and also we were able to go away on holiday. And we were booking holidays in March to go away in August, and that was fine. Now, apparently, it's not.
Well, you and I have in this sort of evolving conversation that we've had over the months. I think we've both sort of agreed that from time to time we both drift away from the minutiae of it. I can't be bothered to keep up with it, with what's being said, because so much of it feels like we're being played.
Yeah.
You know, you feel them moving towards, you know, keeping us quiet, you know, giving us the happy pills.
Well, I only found out the weekend that apparently you're allowed to go outside in England anyway, to meet somebody for exercise, but only standing up. And I'm thinking, you're just going, what? I mean, who comes up with this nonsense? And what if I want to lie down with them and do some, you know, horizontal exercising? Apparently that's not allowed. So, you know, it's ridiculous.
I know. What if you just got a bit out of breath and you just sit down on a park bench? You know, is it legal to collapse?
Apparently not. No, apparently you'll be lifted. You'll have your collar felt by a plod who'll come along and whisk you away and put some handcuffs on you. I mean, it's just madness.
Yeah, you're not allowed to faint, and you're not allowed to be exhausted. I think I really do feel potentially, I'm trying to be optimistic. We ought to sort of collectively look back on all this and see that there are some fundamental things that we need to be that we've been made aware of, some of the realities about the way that we tend to relate to one another, and we really should learn from it. You know, there's a lot of scary talk about great resets and cultural revolutions and all the rest of it, which, you know, put that to one side.
Yeah.
But I think we've been shown that we have tended to be, we had been sort of sleepwalking down a path, but a bright light was turned on where that path was actually going. You know, we were sort of moving into something a bit hazy and a bit foggy and a bit dark. Couldn't really see it. Well, the lockdown, bang, turned the light on. We saw it, and to me, that's not good. Where we were going, and that to which lockdown accelerated us is not good. And we need to think about that again. And I mean, my goodness, within the political establishment, the political class, there needs to be a revolution there. You know, that we've ended up in this situation where the government was saying one thing and the so-called opposition were just, their only response would be, yeah, well, you should have done more of that earlier.
Yeah.
There's no, and this idea of of checks and balances and people's feet being held to the fire. It just wasn't. The only people whose feet have been held to the fire are, you know, people struggling to keep their businesses going and to home educate their kids. Their feet are in the fire. Everybody else is tucked up warm in furlough and the rest.
Yeah. It's true. Neil, sadly, we're out of time. I was going to ask you how the puppy's doing, but you probably have to answer that with a sort of one-word answer.
Great, right there. Mercifully, she didn't start howling.
Oh, excellent. Good stuff. Brilliant. Listen, I'll talk to you next week. Neil Oliver, up in Scotland, archaeologist, TV presenter, of course, man of sound mind and body, and also, of course, a great philosopher of our times. The point about it is all this. You know, one day we will look back on all this and it might even seem funny, but not at the moment. Not right now. We're not ready for that yet. We're ready to come out. We're ready to walk down the street again without trying to avoid people wearing masks, aren't we? This is talkRADIO.